So in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the differences between the Solana and Ethereum NFT ecosystems and how you can be successful in both. So I'm going to cover Solana first, and then I'm going to cover Ethereum, and then I'm going to cover my strategies for each platform. So with Solana, what I really love about Solana is how bullish I am on gaming in Solana. Because of the ultra fast transactions that are almost no cost, I do feel like Solana is an excellent blockchain for gaming. And you can see that because there's been so much hype around Solana gaming, and there's a lot of Solana gaming projects that are coming out. And I do think the blockchain is well set up for that. So recently there was an announcement where the publisher of PUBG actually is going to build games on Solana. That's massive, right? The PUBG is one of the biggest games out there, and their publisher is actually going to start building on Solana. So I'm very bullish on Solana gaming projects. Another part of Solana I'm quite bullish on is utility projects. Shadowy Supercoder has done really well. DeGods with their Dust protocol has also done really well. So if you actually look over here, you can see that 2 of the 3 top projects are actually utility projects, right? So Shadowy Supercoder DAO, for example, has done incredibly well. And DeGods, they just came out of nowhere where a couple of months ago, they had like a 10 SOL floor, and now they're at a 90 SOL floor, which is an insane run up. Now, another project that's also done well on the utility side is Stone Ape Crew. I believe, obviously, Aurora is a gaming project. And then another one that I personally hold is Solana Money Boys, which is at a 20 SOL floor, which is pretty impressive considering that they minted at 0.33 SOL. So essentially, it's a 60x for the people who got in there that early. I got in at 2.5 SOL, so I'm not going to complain, but that's still pretty ridiculous. So I am very bullish on both utility and gaming projects on Solana. Now, the other side of Solana also is there's far more of a degen and flipping culture. Lack of gas makes flipping easy because there's really no penalty. So on Ethereum, if you have a project that's kind of, if you're not really going to make a decent profit on it, it's not even worth to sell it because gas itself is going to eat into your profits. So with Solana, because the fact that gas doesn't really exist, transaction costs are like 0.0001, it makes it really easy to just sell NFTs. And I've seen this personally myself, where when I have projects that I have low or moderate conviction on, I get rid of them fast and I reallocate to high conviction. While on Ethereum, I have projects that I don't have that much conviction on, but I haven't sold them just because it's not really worth it with the gas fees, right? Like, it's just like I'm not making anything. So that's the psychological aspect of it, where it encourages a more degen culture where people aren't really holding long term and they're flipping. Now, obviously, this is not true for every community. You can see that communities like Monkey DAO with Solana Monkey Business, as well as DeGods, as well as like Degenerate Ape Academy, they do have more diamond hands in there. But I have noticed something where a lot of liquidity goes to these kind of like crappy PFP projects because everybody's trying to make the next 10x on a flip. And because of that liquidity, where the whole degen DAO is going and buying these crappy projects, instead of them being, instead of the degen apes floor price going up because people are reinvesting, people are just trying to chase quick money. And that's something I've seen where it actually hurts the blue chips in Solana, while on Ethereum, for example, I feel like it's been much easier for the blue chips to really keep accumulating value. Now, I'm very wary on Solana of PFP projects that have no real utility except some sort of fancy staking. A lot of Solana influencers pump and dump projects, so there are some good influencers on there, but most of the Solana influencers I've seen, I personally don't like them because they seem to pump their own bags. There's a lot of insider trading. There was a whole trend of low supply projects that people, these DAOs and basically influencers would pump up, and then obviously they would sell. And that was just a huge thing where people just flipping their way through these. And honestly, I lost some money on those, but yeah, I just avoid those kind of projects now. I just focus on high conviction long-term bets. That's the way to go. So my Solana NFT strategy is very simple. What I do is I heavily research projects to understand their fundamentals. I focus on gaming and utility projects, and I look for builders, and I look for teams that are hopefully not anonymous. That's why something like Shadowy Supercoder DAO, even though they banned me from their Discord for something stupid, I still hold mine because they have a team that's legitimate, that's not anonymous, they're fully doxxed, and they're builders, right? That's the kind of team you want to focus on, because long term, that's where the 10x's, 15x's are going to come in from, is builders building great products, because great products ultimately they're able to accrue value to them, right? People want to pay to use them, versus something that's a PFP project with a team that's not there. It's a lot harder to make that work, right? You can still make profile pic projects work, but it really requires a lot better marketing and community building. Now, Solana right now, in my opinion, has amazing projects that are dirt cheap, because so much of the liquidity in the space has gone to trash projects. Now, I'm seeing a return from that right now. It seems like the blue chips and the OG projects are starting to do a little bit better. However, ultimately, the projects that do build something and build something of value, they always will do really well. So these legitimate projects will be around in 1 or 2 years. One of the projects that I'm really liking is Cubist Collective. I hold 2 of them. And guess what? They're at 1 SOL. They've minted at 2 SOL. They're at 1 SOL right now. It's an incredible buy. And that's what I've seen with so many of these projects. There's so many amazing projects out there that basically after mint, they went down to a low price. So if we look at a project like Panzer Dogs, after mint, it basically dipped below mint price a couple of times. It was around 0.73. 0.76, it minted at 1 SOL, right? So with a lot of these really good Solana projects, they go below mint price, and it's not an indication that the project sucks. It's just that a lot of people on the Solana space, they're more broke, they're less educated, they don't really understand how to do research, they're looking for a quick flip. There are honestly a lot of 15-year-old kids who are probably flipping NFTs and trying to make some money, and it's like they're not the most sophisticated. So if you look at a project like Panzer Dogs, it went below mint for a while. You could have bought in and eventually got up to 5.5. So I'm still holding, because I firmly believe that the project's going to keep doing well. Like, obviously we're in a bear market. I do think we're going to go to 10 SOL with this project. But regardless, my point is that a lot of these really good, the best deals on Solana are great projects where people are building something of utility or a game, and they're actually kind of a proper team that's not anonymous, and they're making progress, and nobody's really buying them because they're chasing the next hype train. That's where the big opportunities are with Solana NFT. Now, for me, I avoid PFP projects unless the team is absolutely, they're really great builders. A lot of these profile pic projects, in my opinion, don't really have that much going for them. They're just people who decided to start a project. They have some cool art, but they're not really entrepreneurs. They're not really founders. So the exception to this is, for example, Solana Monkey Business. The founding team's nowhere in the picture. However, they have an incredible community, and that's why they've been able to do so well, because all the big Solana people are in Solana Monkey Business. However, if you look at other PFP projects on Solana, a lot of them have kind of struggled if they don't have a really great founding team. There's really only so much the community can do without support from the core team, right? Now, let's talk about Ethereum, right? And again, I'm not the biggest Ethereum whale. I have more experience with Solana, but I have had some of my biggest wins on Ethereum, so that's why I've been diving deeper and deeper into Ethereum. So Ethereum is honestly where the whales are, right? There's a lot more money involved. Ethereum is also where art and culture projects do really well, and they do a lot better than Solana. On Solana, art/generative art projects don't do that well from what I've seen. There are definitely a lot of degen projects and pumps and dumps on Ethereum as well, but there's a lot less paper handers due to the gas, and I do feel like the culture is a bit more evolved. So there's a different vibe in Ethereum where utility is important for me, but I'm also looking at kind of the vibes of the project, if the art/culture side a bit more. I'm also looking at the community, and I'm basically it's a different vibe to it, right? So it's not as much where with Solana I'm like utility or gaming, or it has to be something incredible. But with Ethereum, if they have some sort of interesting thing that they're doing, even if it's not, let's say, some rock solid utility, I think that's enough in some cases to buy into it, if enough whales like it. And I do feel like a lot more projects from Ethereum are built by founders that are not anonymous, while on Solana there's a lot of anonymous founders. So I do like that about Ethereum. There's more docs teams. And when I buy an Ethereum, what I do is I have a different approach, right? So on Solana, I'm looking purely at, let's say, the utility / chance of building a proper game, right? That's my biggest thing, is like, what are they building and how are they building it. So when I buy on Ethereum, what I often do is I look at what trusted influencers are into, what projects they're buying, what projects they're kind of basically they like, right? And what the meta trends are. So a couple of guys I look at is Zeneca33. Zeneca33, he's a big influencer. I really like his stuff, and he's very legitimate, right? He doesn't shill stuff. He's doing things because he wants to, he's interested in projects genuinely. And another guy that also, who I feel like has an excellent taste in NFT projects and has a good eye for the market is Giancarlo buys tokens. And yeah, those are a couple guys. There's also, obviously on the Twitter sphere, there's guys like dcinvestor.eth. So I really try to understand what the meta is, right, of Ethereum, where these big names, they're often kind of pushing the trend, they're recognizing trends, and they kind of push it along. And Pranksy is another one. Carly Riley from the Overpriced JPEGs podcast is another one. So Overpriced JPEGs is an excellent podcast. So I'll actually, yeah, so this is the podcast another one that you should be listening to as well. So the other big thing about Ethereum is a lot of these influencers / thought leaders, I like to think of them more as thought leaders because they're not really your traditional influencers, as in they're not pumping and dumping projects. They're not kind of just taking money for promoting projects, right? They're more thought leaders, and they've already made so much money in the space. They're not really concerned about making more money. What I noticed with them is they're often more focused on essentially delivering value to their audience, and also just promoting projects that they feel like are doing something unique and good in the world. So that's what Ethereum feels like. It feels like there's a much more experimental vibe to it, where art and culture is rewarded, and where trying new things is often rewarded. While in Solana, it feels like it's a much more narrow scope, where a lot of times, if you come up with a really cool idea, your project, it's people are only interested in the money in many cases, which it's sad to say. Now, because there's such a larger base of Ethereum whales that have already made it, projects based on social good and kind of actually providing a lot of value, not only to their holders, but to the world itself, often can do well. So an example of this, a project that I constantly keep talking about, is Meta Angels, where they have such a big focus on generosity, and they have a lending program so you can get access to their community even if you can't afford their NFT. So those projects often do get a lot of free press from these thought leaders, and that's one thing where there's a meta. And you've also seen this with women-led projects which have done extremely well, because a lot of these thought leaders will push those projects along because they're doing something interesting, different, and inclusive, and actually bringing more people into the space. So that's something to understand, is a lot of the people who make the market in Ethereum, right, who kind of decide what the trend is, who kind of push the narrative along, they're not just interested in the money, they're interested in things like Creative Commons, which is basically you have complete copyright freedom over your NFT. They're interested in things like inclusivity, women-led projects, etc. So you want to understand the meta and understand that Ethereum and Solana are different in that sense. Now, Ethereum is the platform where generative art does really well. Me personally, I don't know anything about generative art, so avoid it. But that's again something to keep in mind, where art and generative art all do well on Ethereum. Now, my Ethereum NFT strategy, I do look at utility projects, right? But I also look heavily at culture-based projects. So I bought some Deadheads, and they're basically making a whole like animated series. And I bought them because in a way in Ethereum, you're being a culture investor, as Giancarlo likes to say, where you actually, people are trying to build the next big brand. So for example, if you look at Deadheads, yeah, it's a moonshot, right? It's probably, are they gonna be the next big brand? Probably not, but the fact is, I do like to allocate a little bit of my portfolio to these moonshot culture projects. Another big part of Ethereum is communities, huge for me, which is why Meta Angels is a project I'm really bullish on, because in Ethereum, communities can be often one of the biggest reasons behind a project doing well. We've seen Doodles how, because they had such a diamond-handed community where everybody had good vibes, they had a very strong organic run-up. Same thing with Meta Angels, where they're actually doing community, but actually they have a utility-based approach to the community, right? So instead of it just being like, okay, hey, we're gonna have an amazing vibes, they're actually doing specific things in their Discord to encourage people to meet each other. So that's a big thing for me, is community is pretty big, and I'm pretty bad at art projects, so I stay clear of them. Now, gaming on Ethereum is also pretty big, so I do think there's a lot of great gaming projects. I have the same approach. I look for projects that are founder based, where they have really great founders that are not anonymous, and I back those projects. And essentially with Ethereum, I do feel like there's a much broader field where I do look at gaming utility projects, but then I also look at these projects that are doing things that are more brand based, right? Like Doodles, they're trying to build a brand, and that's been a 10x for me, right? I got in at 1.5 Ethereum, I bought 2 of them. Now I sold one at 12, I have the other. So that's a kind of trades that you want to be making, is finding these really high level projects where they're building something really cool, but it's not necessarily like a purely utility or purely gaming based play, but it's more of, let's say, a cultural brand kind of play, because that's something that I see just really the next big Star Wars and the next big Lord of the Rings could come from an NFT community. And that's what we're kind of all betting on in the Ethereum space right now. So guys, that's a little bit about how I view the Solana versus Ethereum space. So Solana, I'm far more just disciplined and rigorous, and I just go for utility and gaming. For Ethereum, I'm far more open to interesting new ideas, especially even if it doesn't involve monetary gain, right? Even if it's something where it's like, hey, this is a cool new idea that is doing some good and maybe you're not going to make money in it. I do think that the narrative behind that can often lead these projects to do really well. So I hope you enjoyed that video. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'm enjoying doing these videos because it allows me to understand my own strategies when it comes to buying into these projects and how I develop conviction for them. So let me know what's the next video you guys want me to make, and I appreciate you guys watching this channel. Cheers.